Ours cannot be curbed, and people can't back out into the state road. Those are the minor details, but it's a beautiful park, and everywhere I go, I hear nothing but compliments on that. Celebrities Lyme happened, obviously. It was a big deal. It was one of the best ever, very well organized. Every year there's more and more concern about security and safety. And, our police, our first responders do an amazing job of making sure people are safe and having a good time. We had relatively zero incidences, 3 minor calls, and the fireworks were from Dominion, donation from Dominion, probably the best we've ever had. There's been music all over our town Friday nights. I just came from the beach. There's Wednesday evenings as well on the beach. Also theater, the high school production was unbelievable. The Erin Sousa Stanley's production, not Broadway Kids, it's the other one. But they had the high school all shook up. It was incredible. It was Broadway quality. And of course, the Theater Under the Shell happened for a week. Joe Smith submitted his resignation his last day. He's our chief building inspector. His last day will be Friday. I have worked out an agreement with his part-time person, Steve Way, who works part-time for us over the last couple of years. He's going to work full-time in an interim basis. We signed a deal for 6 months, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with that position. He is intimately involved with the school project, Steve is. And the school project obviously is in, as you can tell when you drive by the schools, is in full gear as well. So we thought it would be very important to keep Steve on and make sure we have that continuity as we prepare for a permanent replacement to Joe Smith. The primary is August 14th. I believe it's going to be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's typical on the state and federal elections. That's next Tuesday, folks. It's coming up quick. The Miracle League continues to grow their fund. They just received $10,000 2 nights ago from the Main Street group. That's from the 5K that they ran. And they do all sorts of other fundraisers through the year. They dumped all their money, not all of it, to Miracle League. They also gave $5,000 last night to the Children's Museum, and they have a nice display in there. It's a farmer's market for kids. There's going to be an Oyster Fest to benefit the Miracle League. That's going to be on October 6th. It's going to be the St. John's Green. It's going to be private property, so the town didn't have a chance to reject it, as we did a couple of years ago, where they wanted it on one of our streets, and we don't allow that kind of activity on our streets. But it's going to be an Oyster Fest. We're hoping it's the first annual. We hope this is a continuation, that we can raise money for the Miracle League. It's going to need, operational money as it continues on. That should be a big deal. October 6th, you might want to mark your calendars. Also, there's going to be a mega sports gala up at the Mohegan Sun on November 16th. A lot of local sports stars and national sports stars who might have kids afflicted that would benefit from a field like a Miracle League field, or just want to lend a hand. We'll be lending their name and their reputation toward this. So see, that is coming. And also, you'll be invited to a prom in the spring, a prom for adults as a fundraiser for the Miracle League. That's all the Miracle League I have. We are aggressively looking at health insurance alternatives than our self-insurance plan that we have now. We've seen monumental growth that we all have had to stomach over the last several years. This 28% that we had to take on this year, as much as we were doing so much good stuff with our budget, that 28% having to take that in, it was disappointing, to say the least. We're looking at the Connecticut 2.0 plan. We've had people come down from the comptroller's office in the state. We're also our Brown & Brown, our health insurance consultants, are also pushing us in that direction. When we're negotiating union contracts, we're putting language in that contract that should we go to Connecticut 2.0, there'll be provisions that we can move through through that transition smoothly. And of course, everybody's on board. Everybody wants to save money. Don't forget, our employees have to pay their portion too. So we're all on board. It's a good plan. We looked at it last year, and based on where we thought we would be, it wouldn't have been a good deal for us. It would have been, hindsight, at 28%. We're not in yet. We didn't jump into it because who knows where we'll be next year, right? So we're going to do a recalc, say at March, and see where our trend is heading. With our self-insurance, we might end up with one of those years where it's a 0 or a 3%. As well, the Connecticut 2.0 plan could end up with a double-digit increase because they're taking on a lot of towns suddenly. So we're going to watch it. We're going to find the best deal for us as a town, to the benefit of the taxpayers, the employers, employees, etc. We're aggressively looking at that, both the school side, of course, and the town side. Because of the vandalism, recent vandalism, both at the bandstand and the benches that you read about, we are, I worked at, I reached a deal, made a relationship with the East Lyme Public Trust. They're going to donate $10,000 toward high-def cameras that we'll also be able to see at night. And they'll be installed in our parks. I'm working with Atlantic Broadband to get a free link for our security cameras to be live at our dispatch centers. So if we see activity, we can get the police there. If we miss that activity, but there is vandalism, we're going to have some cameras that we're going to be able to really identify people. The vandals on the boardwalk were not identifiable. Old cameras, it was in the dark. I think there was salt on the screens, all that stuff because they're down. They're in some harsh weather, and the cameras have been there for about 8 to 10 years. Cameras now are very inexpensive, and we're going to put them all over the parks, in our parking lots, for security reasons, and outside our facilities as well. So that's coming, and East Lyme Public Trust has donated $10,000 toward that. So they're great partners in our town, as well as the Main Street group. So you hear that theme a lot, right? Everybody working together, everyone just doing their part to make it better. Lastly, you may have heard about Costco. We didn't give up on them. We continue to work with the developer and work out a deal. It's been approved, so everything on the town end is done. They've met all approvals. They've met approvals with the state DOT, which means their temporary access into their site has met approval. That was holding this thing up for a whole long time too. Costco is visiting our town, flying in from Seattle, Kirkland, to our town to see the site firsthand instead of seeing it on a Google map, and construction shall begin in a couple weeks. It will be about a 16-month process. We expect them to open on November of 2019. That's the slated beginning of opening of their project. Lots going on with tight budgets and the most efficient government that I can remember. There's fewer people doing as much, if not more, work. So things are getting backed up. We're noticing that people are calling and requesting certain things that maybe 3 or 4 years ago we'd be able to just send a truck out and get fixed, and now we don't have the manpower for it. Things are getting in queues now, and that's just the nature of the beast. And we expected a reduction in service levels, but they take it to heart. They feel it. They don't like telling people it might be a couple of weeks or we just can't get to it, kind of thing. Construction is starting over at Saunders Point. We're seeing the drainage, storm drains being raised, and we're getting ready for a big paving construction job down there in the fall. That's about all I have. I'm sure you might have a question or two.
You want to start with John? Questions?
No.
Lisa?
Yeah, I have a few. So Joe's retiring, is that what I heard?
Yes.
That was,
No, resigning. If I said retiring, I apologize. He submitted his letter of resignation.
was this a surprise?
Not to me. No.
So Brown and Brown is our healthcare broker. Am I using the right term?
Consultant.
Consultant. Okay. So how long have we had them?
6 years? More?
don't think the answer matters.
Maybe,
I think Lisa's next question is going to be.
I'm more than that, I think.
More than that.
Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
here 4 now.
Do we
Amazing.
go out to bid for that work?
We haven't since Brown and Brown has been on board with us.
So would we be doing that coming up?
Well, that's something we can.
I don't know that we do. We don't pay them directly, right? They make a commission off of what we buy, or
Well,
we
they
don't
must.
pay them
Yeah,
directly.
I would imagine they would make a commission.
Yeah, so
I'd like to
I don't think we pay them as consultants. We trust in their judgment and all the work they do for us. So we have a good partnership with them.
Which is great, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, in light, or in the same vein of everything else we're looking at, that we've done for a while, I think it would be in the town's best interest to bid that work out. I mean, if nothing else, it keeps vendors on their toes.
Let me ask you, do we ever cut a check to Brown and Brown?
Well, they get a percentage, you just said, right?
But we don't cut that check, right?
It's not directly paid by the town.
Yeah.
But they get a percentage of the healthcare cost, so it's
Right.
not in their interest to drive down healthcare costs, because they're giving
Well,
themselves a
right.
cut and pay.
Good point.
The way it's done is it's on a per contract basis, and, I mean, the fee has been the same for, several years,
So they
now
get dollars per head,
it's
not percent commission.
correct.
But the work that they're doing is they're going out and looking at different plans and putting those options on the table for you to choose. So their percentage, would be based on whatever plan you ultimately choose. I mean, I think the real thing that we want to have happen is multiple plans being looked at and picking the best plan possible at that time. So I don't know if you could get another consultant to bid for that work. I guess you could. I don't know if it matters is what I'm saying, because I don't know.
Unless you got 3 different options from somebody else. I mean, it's just, and we may
Yeah.
end up doing business the way we're doing it. I just think in the spirit of trying to keep everybody on their best offer for the town, I'd like to see us poke at that a little bit and see,
Build a kindred.
yeah.
Even if it just means chatting with other towns and see if they have somebody else
Yeah,
that they use.
just to see because that's a huge expenditure for the town. If there's
We end up
any
going
way,
with Connecticut 2.0. It's not a negotiate. It's the price is the price,
yeah.
and they get a cut, and that's all it is.
All right, I'd just like to poke at that a little bit. It's a huge cost. If there's any way we can get tighter there. And is that something that we could hear about next month? It might be in.
Okay, we'll look at it before the end of the year.
Okay, great, thanks. Regarding the school projects, I assume we have some kind of schedule. We know if we're gonna be on track for school opening.
There's always hiccups with these big ones. I've met several times with with ONG and all that. They're on schedule. There's been some change orders. The building committee is on top of that, and Rocky's doing a great job with that. And it's all good. It's all good.
So there's no risks to getting where we need to go for school to open, no,
They're fairly confident the last time I talked to them, and Jeff is pretty much on top of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, school's going to open on opening day.
and the plan is going as, the plan will be implemented
Yeah.
as, okay,
Yeah.
great.
So far.
On the Miracle League, do you have a sense of what % we have achieved toward our goal?
I think they wanted $500,000, and I think, is that too much?
No, I think
It was $500,000. I think they're getting closer and closer to 200,000.
Oh, so there's a ways to go.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're earning it 5,000, 10,000 at a time.
I see.
We haven't got any big hitters yet. We haven't got the Eversources and the Dominions and the EBs. Yeah, they typically will come on when you get half your money. Then
Yeah.
they see it's a viable project,
Right.
and then they start going, okay, here we go.
So
And
then
they'll
once
bring us
we,
home.
excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sorry.
Once we acquire the funding to actually build the field, where's the funding gonna come to maintain it?
The Miracle League will continue to raise money, and through their leagues and through participation, it raises money. It's a nonprofit organization.
So that's not gonna be a town expense?
It's not a town expense. We will utilize in-kind, like we'll use our fellows to I guess there's no raking of the field, right? There's no cutting of the grass, but to pick up the trash at the end of the weekend, like we would down at Bridebrook. We'll swing through and do that, and we'll make sure it's all polished up. There's still some town pride and some town ownership of that as a host town, but there shouldn't be a financial obligation to it.
Okay, good. So I think this is my last question. So when Costco starts, I heard you say in a week, right? Thereabouts.
Yeah.
So will the driving range close, or
No.
they're working behind it?
It's I just brought it up for someone on Google Maps, and look at it when you get home, the satellite. There's a lot of room between. Okay, there's that power station, that big
Yeah, the
ugly metal
substation.
power station right at the end there. There's power lines that come off of that, and you can follow those right into the hill, right? To the left of that is plenty of room, and that's where Costco will go. So it's really behind pools, etc. The highway, this way, the highway kind of goes like this, as the driving range goes like this. They're not perpendicular to one another.
Yeah.
So there's this thing, and the Costco will go way in the back there,
Has-
along the highway,
Has Conover
right up against the highway.
purchased the property that the driving range is on?
No.
Oh,
It's still an option by the current owners, which are the family that is part of the True Value, Cash True Value family. And there's a family group that still owns that. That won't be able to be built upon until the bridge and all the on-ramps and off-ramps are finished. The state DOT, OSTA, Office of State Traffic Authority, won't allow any more traffic other than the Costco, other than one business to go into that because of the temporary entrance. They will be building an on and off ramp on that side. So as you come off of Pools, et cetera, it'll still be in front of Pools, et cetera. You'll go straight instead of the hairpin turn. It'll be
okay,
a half a hairpin.
yeah.
Straight to the access road. There'll be a light there. You can go left into Costco, go right out to Flanders Road. There'll also be a light at Flanders Road. But that road will be on the highway side of that transformer site. It won't be over by the shack or the driving range. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the temporary entrance, and that will be like that for a little while. It'll be a little crazy, and everything's crazy because of the bridge underneath the bridge is pinched. It's only 2 lanes in each direction. We really need at least 3,
Right.
plus pedestrian and bike lanes, and we
Right.
don't have that. When they finish that bridge, everything will open up and all the possibilities of safe travel. And the state will take over that. If phase 2 isn't done, the state will more than likely put the entrance to Costco on the other side of that transformer by eminent domain or other means if necessary. So
Okay.
they'll buy the land or whatever.
Thanks. Can we add the Brown and Brown consultation to our running list of issues that we have?
We can add the healthcare review of the whole healthcare and kind of look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I just don't want to lose
Should
that.
we do that?
Okay, that's-
Just before we leave the Costco, is there
Mhm.
some kind of stage plan or something somewhere out there on the town website, or? I mean,
Say
if
that
we
again?
could- Is there some kind of schedule, plan, overhead view, that whole thing out on the town or some other, I mean, I've seen.
It's public
Pieces
record,
of
and
it.
it's been, the thing is, we've been talking about it since 2001.
And that's why.
And then 2006 and 7 when they came forward. If there isn't, we probably will get one up
That's what my
there.
head still
It's
has,
been
that
out
whole-
there. The day has rerun the pictures as well. Yeah. They become more obvious once the trailer. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before Costco's built. Costco will be built in 90 days. The pad will be there, the utilities will be there, the on and off ramp, the road will be in, the traffic lights will be in, and Costco then will be built, and it'll be up and stocked in 90 days. They'll bring their own team in to build that. It's a quick build, and they have a team that comes in and does it. It's the prep of that land which actually needs to be raised. The whole site needs to be raised up, so that's part of the issue.
Do you have a sense of how much tax revenue we're going to get from it?
Go figure. I asked that question. Go figure. You would
Expect.
ask it of me. About $500,000 is a conservative number from that one building. Another $1 million from the other building, phase 2,
Would you say?
Another million.
Oh, another million. Okay.
If phase 2 ever gets developed at the driving range and behind True Value. And we're going to approach $800,000 from the apartments. Once that's fully built out, they're going to be coming back for 120 more units. So there'll be 800,000 to $1 million there. And don't forget, with all those cars that are registered in our town, there's all that tax revenue that we
With all
pick
the
up as well.
students in the apartments, there's gonna be that cost.
It's not going to be that
Yeah.
many.
Okay.
Been 30, I think it's about mid-30s as far as kids go, and we have plenty of room in our schools for them.
Okay. I'll save my questions if you wanna go, Camille.
I have an insurance question, but I think I'll wait till we get to the special appropriation.
Okay.
Thank you.
This one? Yeah.
Yeah, just back to Costco, just a clarification. So the state is going to be working on this temporary entrance to Costco, let's say. And
The developer actually
the
does.
developer will do it, but the state requirements will be met, let's say.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And because of the temporary nature of that entrance, the additional or other retailers are not being pursued at this point, or they're not coming forward?
They can't build the back half of that property, the 2/3 of the property, which is, the mall and the mini boxes. And
Right.
there's, I think, 4 or 5 mini boxes that the zoning has allowed, which is about the size of a Best Buy or a Dick's Sporting Goods. Give you an idea, that's a big
Right.
store, right? There's about 4 or 5 that are allowed within that
Okay.
complex. That all can't be built until the bridge, Flanders is widened. Flanders will be widened during this project. There'll be improvements to Flanders Road. You just can't widen it under the bridge, so it's a
Just
pinch
between-
point, no
but
matter
just
what.
between the two exits, or just between the two
No,
exits?
no, typical, it'd be much wider than that. I mean, the on and off ramps to this whole project, when the state gets involved, the off ramp's gonna end up somewhere past Mobile Station. It's gonna come in through that motel. They still haven't quite figured out how they're gonna get on the highway going north. They never really came up with a good plan for that. I think it's gonna be a loop
snag.
where Mobile Station
A
is.
minor snag.
Well, I said it wrong. They do know, but they're trying to figure out where and most efficient. But coming from, let's say, Flanders Donuts, to get onto the highway north, you come onto the bridge and you take a right onto the highway. They don't like left turns on the highways. They want clover leaves.
Okay.
They want right lanes going on the highways and picking up speed and all that stuff, not.
So, back to the point about the, I guess,
Yeah.
timetable. So for phase 2, the best timetable that might be?
5 years.
5 years?
I'd go 5 years. And that is, let's face it, the state has to build these bridges. We know what that's like. But I'll tell you, the bridges needed to be built in 2004. It was scheduled to be done.
Okay.
And then first selectman Famika said, well, do you know about this project? You should be doing the bridge. You shouldn't be just fixing the deck on top. You should be doing the whole bridge, because we're going to need Flanders Road to be wider. And you don't want to do this twice. The state went, oh, yeah, you're right, and pulled back. They did all the other bridges on 95, and they've been waiting to do this one. So it's high priority. You'll see them doing the Niantic River Bridge
Right,
next summer,
that's gonna happen.
Spring and fall as well.
So as
It's-
a revenue source, phase 2 is still out there?
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that for sure.
One thing at a time, but once Costco's in, all the retailers will be jumping on
Right.
to do that.
You would
Unless the
imagine.
retail crumbles, and then you end up looking at an office park
Right.
situation or a medical park, which is still possible. But then you'll have the entrance, and then you'll have the utilities and the infrastructure to be able to support that. You build an office park, you're not making enough money to build off ramps off the highway and bring in water and sewer and electric and road systems and what goes into storm drainage these days. You just don't let the rain go into the ground.
I have just one other question for Mark. At one point, we had discussed establishing maybe a task force or a committee about the insurance issues, the increases in insurance costs. So is that still on the table, or is it become unnecessary because you're looking most seriously at the Connecticut 2.0 plan?
I think it's probably a little obsolete or unnecessary right now,
Okay.
because it seems to be it's the self-insurance or the Connecticut 2.0. For us to get into a standard health insurance policy probably wouldn't work because of the costs involved and the trailing back costs of getting out of the self-insurance as well. We're not going to save money with our claim history. We're not going to save money by just knocking on the Hartford's door
Yeah,
and saying,
that's
"Will you pick up our insurance?"
Right.
Or whoever sells
Yeah,
insurance, Blue Cross.
We've talked about that. We're not a good,
We're not a
we're
good
good
risk.
risk at
Yeah,
this
we're the
point.
16-year-old
Right.
got his license yesterday and hit 3 cars on the way back from DMV. We're that risk right now.
Yeah.
2.0 has to accept us. They have to. They can't say no, and they have to offer us the rate they're offering everyone else. It's a standard blanket rate. It's so big. There's 200,000 people being insured in it. That the good risks and the bad risks blend. It's a big enough pool to blend. Good questions. So right now, I feel confident. It's being driven by our unions as well. Board of Ed, the teachers were kind of demanding that we looked at it. 2 of my biggest unions in town are also being negotiated right now, and they're demanding it. They're demanding we look at it. Heck, it'll be good for all of us if we can, hang our hat on the state and say, keep the rates level. It doesn't come back to us. It's less work. It's a good plan, and it's a good health insurance plan for our employees. So it's also a good retainer for good help.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna leave
Thank you.
Costco alone. The only thing I had a question about the insurance, Costco,
I know, whatever.
I think I approved
I've never
that.
been in one.
I think I approved that when I was on the zoning board. That's how long that's been
I
sitting.
know, right.
La, 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 la.
You did this.
I know that.
You actually were the chair.
My question about the self-insurance, about the whole insurance, is we don't have a contract because we're self-insured, so we can pull the trigger at any time. We don't have some we can only execute a new contract in July.
July 1st
July
is when we
1st.
would switch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And the
we're locked
reason for that,
into the
more
next-
than any other reason, the reason for that is the HDHP plans that we've gone ahead and paid everybody their upfront health save HSA accounts. That are, so there's a whole lot of people that are on it, like all our teachers are, and they have that money that we can't ask for back. And then for us to switch, that would be money down the drain. So we can get on to the
So this is,
CT.
it's not the kind of thing that next month you're gonna come in and say,
No.
oh, by the way, we're.
It's going to be for next year's budget.
You more or less need to make a switch like that when when one plan year begins, because you have employees in plans that have various deductibles, so an employee wouldn't want to lose the benefit of any deductibles that they've already met in going into a new plan. The one item that we would have to deal with if we made a switch on a July 1st would be the run out from the prior year claims with the prior year
Training
vendors. That's your incurred but not reported claims.
Okay.
So.
And the only other question I had was on the East Lyme Day. Financially, I mean, that you said, I think in the past, we don't make money on East Lyme Day, but we showcase the town. Is there any potential that we can kind of close that gap with anything, or are we getting enough interest that we can say, we can turn the heat up a little bit on the food cost or the.
We think alike, though.
Well, we're paying the police, right? I mean, so it costs us money.
Yeah, how about-
I understand, we've talked about that in the past, it's a showcase for the town, it's not a money-making venture like a flea market.
Sure.
But can we turn the pain down a little bit by,
We're looking at that. We had the most vendors ever. There's a reason for that. It's pretty cheap to get into it. We're going to look at out-of-town vendors, maybe a different price point. I think we'd make a little bit of money back here and there. Parks and Rec did donate. I think part of their budget, not donate, but they had an expense of $5,000 to pay for some of the security for that day. There's a lot of it's all hands on deck. It's our Super Bowl, so everybody who's employed by the town in Parks and Rec and Public Works and Police and all that, they're all on, and first responders. So there's a lot of that cost, but
But if it's our Super Bowl, we're gonna charge $1 million a minute for
We
commercials,
can't-
right?
There's no halftime show either.
You
Um,
you get my point.
I do, and
I'm good.
I know it is a big expense, so we have to realize that it is an expense that and we've seen other towns have wonderful festivals. Just to use one, the Rose Arts Festival in Norwich was famous throughout New England. It was a 4-day, 5-day festival. They brought in big bands that you go to the record store and buy their vinyl or their records back then, and then you'd see them in Norwich, and they ran out of money, and they decided to put their priorities somewhere else, and I'd hate to see that happen too, but it's a 1-day festival that, heck, it can't be beat. We did cut down on the advertising of it. We tried to make it a little bit more local this year, and maybe we don't need to make this a regional affair. It helped with our security. It helped with the trouble we've had in the last couple of years. Some fights, some too many people in one spot kind of thing. So it actually went off pretty good this year.
Okay.
Have you gotten any feedback from the brick and mortars as to how they do on that particular day?
Some do well because they're out front selling their wares. I know like Tumbleweeds, they have a double tent, and man, I couldn't get in there to buy a shirt. I actually went in the next week to buy the shirt I wanted, couldn't get in. There were so many people, and then others, maybe they're not the type of business that are going to attract that. The auto parts store, or
Toy shop.
but they're showcasing some of them are showcasing their business. Arthur Murray's, was out there
Yes.
dancing. People know that we have a dance studio on our main street, and I think it's a good showcase.
So I guess what I'm just getting at is sometimes there's intrinsic value in hosting something like that
Yeah.
if local retailers and business people can do better.
I had the regional planner at COG. He pulled me aside at the end of the COG meeting. He goes, your town is the best town among the 22. I mean, Niantic's got it going on right now. And we all share that credit, and all the Main Street groups and all the people that just do those little things. It's going on right now. There's a little magic in the air. I'd like to see a little bit more retail down. We have that one storefront that's closed, and because of some high rents, we have a couple over here. There's not enough variety in the retail, but that will come as the people continue to come. It will come. But we have it going on. The park adds that final touch to Main Street. The boardwalk has always been good. And our beaches have been reasonably manageable. We were very worried. We talked about the state parks are going to be free. What's that going to do? People, I don't know, but they're not necessarily wanting to up the $40. By the way, those fees are much higher because they're running them on their own now, and $40 for an out-of-town car or $10 a person walking in. And we haven't, one or two Saturdays or Sundays we've sold out with no parking available, but for the most part, you could find a space and go to the beach if you're a resident and have a sticker. So it's been a great summer.
Any more questions for our first selectman?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Director of Finance.
Oh, good evening. So, in your packets tonight, I put, for the month of June, draft budget and revenue reports for you, and I also included a summary sheet of just, as of today's date, what the total revenues for the month of June are posted at, and the same for the expenditures, and ran, I looked up, like I normally do on that.
Where is that? What are you looking at, please?
This.
Oh,
Okay, so, I just highlighted, the larger, revenues and expenditures, for the month, as of today, because these really won't change, but I just thought it would be information that, you would like to have. We are still, through the end of this month, we can still make payable expenditures, meaning anything that's been received on or before June 30th, we book it as a payable to last year, and then everything else that we have open POs for will be considered an encumbrance, and those balances kind of get charged to this year. And I mean, at this point, we really shouldn't have any more, we shouldn't be receiving any more invoices for items through June 30th, but there always seems to be a few that do trickle in. As a matter of fact, one of the last bills that we get is from the state for unemployment, any unemployment liabilities that we've had, because they're almost 2 months behind in billing us. So that's like always one of the last bills to come in. So with that said, looking at,
Can I ask you a quick
Oh,
question
sure.
before you off that? How much have these numbers changed since last week?
in terms of,
Right now, when you hand us these packages, we all start thumbing through them and taking out pens and doing math and trying to guess real quick
Oh, right.
what we care about, what we
Mhm.
don't care about.
mhm.
Are these numbers stable enough that you could send them out with the packet so that we could look at them then?
You know what, for the month of June, it was, I have a new staff member doing accounts payable who, by the way, submitted a 2-week resignation on Monday. So it's been working with her to get, to deal with one fiscal year end and the beginning of another fiscal year. And it's been totally overwhelming, so it's been like a work in progress. And guess what? I'm gonna have to start all over again. And it's kind of critical at this point because we're still working on closing last year and.
Start
Excuse-
all over again with regard to
Training.
what?
Training an
a new
employee,
person
yes.
coming in? But
Yes.
if you have an experienced accounts payable clerk, there shouldn't be much training involved.
She
right?
submitted her resignation.
No, but a new one. Oh, is there somebody in the office that you're going to move into that position, or are you hiring from outside?
I have to hire, well, first of all, we had to post internally.
Okay.
And so, I've got to go through that process. And I'm going to look into hiring somebody temporarily because really can't afford not to have someone doing that work.
Mhm.
So, this is going to be, an added challenge to pulling everything together. So, in answer to your question,
She's scrambling, right?
I could have sent the reports out, but the problem is I did that one other time and it wasn't, it was said, this isn't acceptable because the numbers changed. And so it's like, well, okay,
That was
so
probably me.
that's why I chose not to do that. So, it's,
You're de-
I'm
yeah,
happy to
you're
send
wrong
you
either
out
way, I
a
get it,
draft
I get
because a
it.
draft is a draft, but when I send a draft out and the number changes too much, then it's a problem.
Which
So
is why my question was what my question
Yeah,
was, is how
so-
dynamic are these numbers?
Yeah,
Can we
so-
make them mid-month? Can we always just look at July 15th numbers and say, okay, this is every month, we're looking at them from the middle of last month? And they're not real time, but they're pretty damn close.
Well, it's fine, it's fine with me. That one particular month, like, the Board of Ed also has issues with staff. The individual that did all of that hands-on bookkeeping, accounting work for them had an injury, and it left like in April and ended up not coming back. So they're sure a position that they're working on hiring at this point in time. So when you have staffing issues, then it makes it difficult sometimes to get the work done, to be more timely for the board meetings. But I'm more than happy to send out a draft report at that point in time, as long as it's understood that that's what it is. I mean, if that's the pleasure of the board, it's okay, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Because I understand it's difficult to get a report in your package, and that's why when I'm like, you know what, I really should take a review, look at what all the larger revenues and expenses for the month are, so I can give you, something, one page to take a look at,
Okay.
so.
We can talk about it towards the end of your report. We all probably have different opinions on
So,
whether or not we would like more time to spend with a report, or whether or not we want it to the penny. Okay.
okay, so then the other thing is, with that said, with the reports that you received tonight, I also took a look at where the revenues are. The revenues are, pretty solid at this point. I have a couple of larger receivables that I'm, looking to get before the end of the month, and then everything else, they're just, smaller amounts. So the estimated, the revenues on the report you received tonight are, 69.7 million. And between, I'm waiting to get a couple of revenues that are a little over 66,000. So that would mean our total revenues would be 69.8 million. Looking at where our expenditures are today and where I think the total expended at year end will be is $69.5 million. So what that means is we're gonna have a little over $200,000 in positive operating results. And so that means that we wouldn't have used any of the fund balance that we applied to last year's budget. Last month, at our June meeting, when we talked about it, I was kind of like piecing it together like it was going to be about 50,000. But once, everything was starting to come in and really looking at everything, I'm thinking that we're going to end up having a little over $200,000 in positive operating results, in addition to not using any of the applied fund balance last year. And a good part of it, what contributing factors are the fact that when the board set the mill rate for the 17-18 year, it added a little bit because of how unsure we were with the state revenue situation. And in addition to that, once we found out what those numbers were going to be, both on the town and the board side, we froze funds, meaning, we said off limits for spending. And as a matter of fact, I still have them in the town's budget. I have those funds encumbered, because let me tell you, if I didn't do that, the departments would have spent it, and if I unencumbered it before August 30th and the departments saw it, they'd be like, well, hey, they'd want, somehow want to spend it, but
they can't, right? I mean.
Exactly.
I mean,
but it's just, I'm like not going to do it until the very last minute. I'll
anything
encumber
that
those.
they would buy in July would have to go to this budget
Right,
year.
you're right.
You can't backdate
No.
a purchase order.
The only way it could happen, like if they had a PO encumbered on June 30th, but we didn't receive the items until July, that's permissible. But, I'm just being like overly cautious about that, because I just, but anyway, so, I'm really pleased. And in some ways, it's good timing for us to have, to get to a point where we can have some positive results, because the last few years have been really difficult for us. And also coming in time with the fact that we're doing the school projects, and we're going to be going to, to market with, and looking to ultimately bond more money than we have, in several years. So I think, I'm just happy to be able to report that to you.
So
I'm
we're
happy
gonna,
to hear it.
so we're gonna
That's
show that
right.
we're a good risk, so our rates have potential to be a little bit
Right.
lower.
So, yeah, and so actually on July 31st, we had a bond and note sale. And before that, we had talked about, rather than going to Moody's for our rating, we went to Standard & Poor's, and they affirmed our rating, which is what we have, but they also gave us positive outlook to maybe move us up a notch.
Mhm.
So it was we really felt good about the call. We feel good about the results, and because in dealing with Standard & Poor's, the conversation was a little bit more like positive than in the past when we were dealing with Moody's. And actually on Monday, what Moody's did last year is they looked at all of their ratings that they had done on municipalities because of the state situation, and they kind of put us on like a watch.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, we have to do it, even though they're not rating us, they want to do like a rating upgrade, if you will. So we have